Go ahead and start with, why do I always record this like I'm talking to another audience? Anyway, this morning we're going to go ahead and start and have some fun with some Substance Painter. So I already went and adjusted the UVs when it comes to this mesh and such. So the first thing we want to do within 3D Studio Max is you press M for your material editor and make sure that whatever material you have selected for your item you're going to have in Substance Painter is named. In this occasion, I'm going to call it a scimitar because that's what it is. Boom. Save that. And then I'm going to go ahead and export it out of 3D Studio Max. Export selected. And here we go, scimitar. Cool. That should be good. And now I'm going to save that, close that, and go ahead and open Substance Painter. No, screen sharing stop. Sorry about that. Okay, share, and let me go ahead and start new with this file. New 248 by 248. Cool. We'll go ahead and select the file, scimitar, and let that load up. Cool. Okay, here we go. Let's go ahead and start. Okay, well, I guess the first thing we're going to do with this is we're going to go ahead and add a ambient occlusion map to this. So to do that, let me see how well I remember this and such. We're going to go right here into the texture settings, and I'm going to go ahead and add an ambient occlusion up here. Boop, probably know this. And then when I get down to the mesh maps right here, I'm going to go ahead and do bake. Let's see, is it ones? Bake mesh maps. And in this occasion, I'm just going to go ahead and keep it to ambient occlusion. And res output size 248. Unlock that because that's going to be 124. Hope this works. Since I'm not using I'm using a non-uniform texture size, and then the bake set select the texture. Duke, duke, duke. And looks like it did. Cool. Yeah, there you go. So now we have a very rudimental light bake on this. You can't, of course, see it much because it's just a flat sword, but that's cool. It's already used and such, and it's already on the mesh. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and go into the layers and add a fill layer so we could add some sort of metallic material for the blade itself. So I'm going to go right here in the layers, and I'm going to go ahead and add a fill layer. And then when it comes to the fill layer, then I need to go ahead and find the properties for that. There we go. And then let's see, what sort of materials? Let's say steel. One of the base ones that we already have. Steel rough, you know. Let's go ahead and try steel rough and see how it looks like, if it actually looks okay. That's actually half decent. And could I scale this a tiny bit? Maybe, no, maybe not yet. Let's go ahead and just keep this for now. So right when we add that, as we can see, you could already see it right on the material itself. If you shift the camera or the lighting, or you can't see it under here, so maybe I should arrange this a different way, but it doesn't matter now. So after I add that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and mask it out. So I'm going to go right here to add a mask, and we'll make it add a black mask because we want to assign where we want the blade to be. And so in this occasion, we're just going to have it be this part of the blade. So I'm going to go right towards polygon fill. And they have different modes that you can get with this. You have triangle mode, you have polygon, you have select a whole element. In this case, it's just going to be polygon. Make sure that's turned up to 100%. And then I'm going to go take it and boom, fill it in. And then if you go to paint mode, as you can see now we have the surface of a blade. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to assign all the different colors to all the different areas. So in this occasion, we're going to go ahead and go get gold for this element. So I'm going to go ahead and do a new fill layer. And then for the material mode, we'll find the standard gold one that's already in there. Apply that. Good start, good start. And then we are going to go and add a black mask, and so we can go ahead and decide the areas that are going to be filled in by this. And I will go into fill mode and select all the areas that I can. Let me see how much I have. And then if you want to have a little bit more control, if you go to triangle and such, or, sorry, this one, you just select them individually. That one. And that one, cool, that's good. That. Let's see. And missed a few. And all this I'm doing by, of course, just clicking. When it comes to filling this in, when in Substance Painter, there is no, the only way to undo it is to do undo. You can't unclick it. To be able to actually undo the color, if you want to do it manually, you have to take this and shift it to 0. But now, since I'm having just precise control when it comes to this, now we have the sword color. Cool. It's nice. And then we're going to do the tip of the sword as well. So just for shits and giggles. So again, fill mode like that, and then drag over, boom, 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 and drag over, and drag over. Cool. And let's go ahead and save this, because in case this crashes for any reason, save as ADK weapon and scimitar. Boom. Cool. Okay, next step is we want to do something leather when it comes to this, the hilt. So now we're going to do another layer, again a filled one as well. And the material mode here, we're going to go see what we have for leather. Have a lot of options, so we can go ahead and shop around to see which one we like. That's kind of cool. That could be that could be the one that I go with. Well, let's see. It's okay. I don't know how much I like the normal map on this. Yeah, that's also okay too. Yeah, you know what, that's actually okay. So let's go ahead and take the scale and change this so it's a little bit more minute. And then I'm gonna want a darker leather because I want this to really, really stick out and such. And then same procedure as the last things. We go down here to the layer itself, go to the mask, and then we add a black mask. And then we go into fill and then just go and fill that in. You could already see we've been doing this for 10 minutes and we're already some good progress when it comes to the look of this. It already looks pretty damn impressive. And just for shits and giggles, let's go ahead and see what it looks like after I save it in render. And then as you can see, it's very basic. I would probably have to play around with the lights and such, but let's go ahead before we do that and get crazy heavy into detail. Let's go ahead and, or heavy into rendering, let's go ahead and add some more detail. So when it comes to this edge right here, I kind of wanted to have it where the steel is a little bit more wider, like a bit brighter than the rest, sort of implying that it's sort of been polished and such. So I'm going to go down to my layers, where are you, Hen, right here. And before I start, let's go ahead and name all these for the purpose of organization. So let's say base steel, boom. It's going to be gold, and finally leather. Saw that. Okay, so to do that, what I wanted to do with the steel to light it up to imply like it's been sharpened, I'm going to take this one right here. I'm going to make a duplicate of it by right-clicking. And we'll keep the mask on right now to see how dramatic the change is. So then I will go back to the color itself. And where's this? Right up here. So one thing I don't like about Substance Painter is the little menus right here can get in the way. I mean, if you have a laptop, it's kind of a pain in the ass. So I'm going to go ahead and bring this up so it's a little bit more brightish. And then we can, afterwards, we can go ahead and play with it. So after I've done that, I erase the color right here in the attributes and such. Then I'm going to right-click on the mask. I'm going to clear that. Cool. And then I'm going to go ahead and select all these edges that I want to be affected by that. 1, 2. And I think there you go. Oh, you see, kind of accidentally touched the wrong place. So how are you going to fix that? You just go right up here to the selection where you put the amount of color on it. And then I'm selecting polygons, and then I want to click these. That's been turned off, and there you go. Now the blade has a really nice edge to it. And we can go ahead and get out of that because that's fill mode, because that's a good start right there. And let's see, what else can we do this to make this more interesting? You know what, I want to go ahead and add some sort of ornamentation to my hilt. So I was thinking about doing some sort of like diamonds or something like that, some sort of a inlay, or not even diamonds, maybe some sort of a jewel, maybe something red. So to do that, we're going to want to create a new layer to give some normal maps to it, and we're going to do that right above the gold. And so right here, right above the gold, I'm just going to go ahead and put a standard layer. I'm going to call it normals. Cool. Save my file, and then before I start, let me see if I could actually do symmetry mode and see if I'll be able to do this to both sides. So if I press L, let me see if it shows up. So you can see that implies the symmetry mode. That's not where I want it. So if I go right up here in mirror symmetry, I'll try X, and let's see, is that going to work? Yep, that's going to work. So this right now, when we create on this one, it's going to help with that and such. So it's going to do it on both sides. So we have to reduce the amount of work. So this layer right here, normals, is going to be one that's going to be purely for height information. There's going to be no lighting in it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that normal and I'm going to make it into a multiply, because mostly what I paint is going to be in white. So it doesn't give much color to the gold elements. And so it gives at least the normal information. So I'm going to go ahead and take the height right here in the options, raise that up. And the roughness and the metal qualities, that's something you can mess with. But since it's gold, I want to kind of have it look a little bit closer to something really shiny with the brush I'm painting to. So this is, let's see if it's overkill, but let's go ahead and try that. And I'm going to zoom in and scale that down, sort of in the same way you do in Photoshop, maybe this much. And how much is that? Is that a good amount to start out with? Yeah, I think that's okay. Then we can go a little bit higher if we want to do something else with the metal. So I'm going to go on the other side, find a placement, and boop, right there. And then as you can see now we have the first details onto the actual normals, some normals onto the actual mesh itself. So what do I want to do next? So the next thing I want to do is that this kind of blade that I'm doing is called something called Damascus steel, which is this kind of steel that was kind of ancient sword making technique that got lost, and it's basically the equivalent of dragon steel or whatever it was in Game of Thrones, where it's like the strongest and most flexible steel in the world. And it kind of looks very wavy in pattern. So how am I going to go ahead and add that waviness to the pattern? I'm going to go ahead and import a new texture into my scene so I could add those normal details, and I'll keep it into this same level right here since it's going to be the same for all of them, so, or in this layer. So what do? I go to File, Import Resources, and then I add resources. And then I already had this seamless wood grain pattern, which kind of looks like the same way these pattern on these swords look. I'm going to select that, open, and then when I click here on definition, it's going to be an alpha because we're going to use it like a brush. And I'm going to add it to, you could add it to either your project that you're currently working on, so you could have it for all versions of Substance Painter, but in this occasion, since it's just for the scimitar, I'm going to keep it there. I'm going to hit import, and as you can see, I have it right there. But I wonder if I have to import. Now I have to either invert this or paint the opposite way. Let me see if this is going to even work and such. But anyway, so now that I have that, I want to try that as a brush. We'll see how much this brush actually can work if I want to mess with it. Oh, no, sorry, I got to add it to it. So I take my alpha, drag it there. And as you can see, it actually did something already on the blade, but I have to figure out, let me see if they changed how to go into 2D mode. Material, no. Here we go. And what I'm going to do to actually paint this, I'm going to change and go from actually 3D mode to actually just 2D so I can find my blade. And then, let's see, what's a good way to do this? You know what? I don't want to actually mess up my other layers, so I'm going to go ahead and just create a brand new layer, and I'm going to again turn this into a multiply. and call this normals 2. And let me see if I could just apply this directly and see what that does when I do that. And then I can just go and delete the rest. Is that as big as they let me go? Now you see that doesn't work quite well, so I think I need to take this brush and I need to rotate it. Angle 90. 45. Brush size. Let me see if I can get a bigger brush size than this brush size. Let's say 130. So I want to go ahead and try to get it all in one button press. Let's see. Actually, if I can maybe just make the brush. Okay, so then like that, it hits the whole of the blade. So instead of that height on it, I want to go ahead and switch that around because the height, I want it to be the opposite. I want it to be a slight indent. So then when I click on that, nice, just one click. And then I think now if I go back to my 3D view to look it out, check it out. Now, as you can see, I have a little bit of a pattern on my blade and such, which is to give me that Damascus steel look. So that's okay. Let me see if I can get it in other locations and then delete the rest of it and such. So, now, you know what? I'm kind of happy as it is, and then if I want anything else to more with it, I could just paint it onto myself. And I think I have to do undo when it comes to that. So when it comes to this normal, I don't want it to be so over the top, so I'm actually going to take this layer and I'm going to go ahead and reduce the opacity on it. Let that calculate. That's weird. Normally the opacity has some sort of an impact on this. So you know what, to kind of counter that, I'll just go ahead and add a white mask. Hit Alt so I can go see the white mask, and then I'm just going to go ahead and paint it about 50% of the color. So I'm going to go ahead and put that to half right there. And then I'm going to go just... You know what, go ahead and start with black first and get the areas that I don't want to have. That, cool. Cool. And basically I'm masking out the parts of those normals that I really don't want, so. Oh. Cool, it's good. And then I'm now going to go and do the 50% of it for the blade. So I'm going to go ahead and take that up here. 50%, and then I will just paint bucket that or do the whole of it. And then if I hit Alt or click on outside of that, it will show me the results. And now that's a tiny bit more subtle. So what's going to be the next part? The next part we're going to do is I'm going to go take those indents on the blade itself, and I'm going to make those into, kind of give it more of a 3D look. So to do that, I'm going to take a duplicate of my gold, which I'm going to use as a darkener, but it's still going to keep, of course, the same specular properties. So I'm going to make a duplicate of that. And keep that as gold copy. And then I'll go ahead and take the color, lower it down a tiny bit more, go back to my mask, and clear my mask. So now what I need is a special brush to kind of give a little bit of darkness to it and a little bit of an outline to these extrusions, so it looks a little bit more like weathered and such. So how am I going to do that? I am going to go right now to my alpha. Go ahead and expand that a little bit so I can see what I'm doing. And here, let's see, And when it comes to the stencil, if you see alpha right here, I'm going to click that. And this is one I specially created for drop shadows for bolts and such to give it a little bit of more dirt to it. So it's called BOLT, bolt shadow, that I created. Boom. And let's see. Yes, it is. Symmetry is still turned on. And then I'm going to go ahead and scale it down a tiny bit. Let's see. Oh, sorry. I need to turn the grayscale 100%. And then try again. No, not quite. There we go. As you can see, I added kind of fakes a drop shadow on the actual bolt itself. I'm going to go ahead and do that to the other side. Oh, a bit off. And then as you can see that now the detail on that blade is a little bit more sharpened or more enhanced. And I'm going to save my work. And let's see, what else can we do to this to make this a little bit more interesting? So I think I want to add some sort of decorative element to the blade hilt itself to make it look like someone took a lot of artisanship when it comes to that. So I'm going to go right here to normals, where I'm painting my normals. And in this occasion, I want to go ahead and just find a regular brush and paint it very small. So let's see, I'm going to go click here. See, circles, one that works pretty good. And then I'm going to come and scale it. My brush by, I don't know what that is on the keyboard. And then I'm just going to go and just start painting myself. So as you can see, it's extruding right now, which is not how I want it. So I want it to go in the opposite direction. So it's going to have let's see, more height, less height. And then I'm going to go and, how was it you did lazy brush on this thing? Was it S, F? No. Well, another option you have if you want to go ahead and paint this detail and not do it like this in 3D is you could just go ahead and switch to 2D mode, which is what I'm going to do. 2D only. And no, bad idea. If it's like this, it doesn't really work. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to 3D mode and just painted myself onto blades. So let's see. You know what? I'm going to switch because I'm using my mouse and I should be using Wacom tablet when it comes to this. So let me go ahead and put this here, switch to that. And then now I'm just going to go and make some sort of a pattern. No, you know what? I'm just going to wait till that and do that a little bit later and such because that maybe it's a little bit further. So let's go ahead and add a jewel right to this element right here. So how am I going to do that? I'm going to go ahead and expand this, and this is going to be a separate layer for color. So I'm going to create a brand new layer, and then I'm just going to go right up to my brush, and I'm going to go change it to be to whatever jewel color I want. Because the thing is, when it comes to the brushes in Substance Painter, you get to decide what is it the brush is going to have. So in this occasion, I wanted to have some height because this jewel is going to kind of stick out of this element. And I'm going to go ahead and take the color a little bit closer to something like this. Yes. And then I have to make sure my brush is good. And let's choose something with a little bit more gradient. So let's go do shape. Like that one. And then scale it on my screen. No, too much. Maybe I need to take the height and raise a little bit more. I don't know how I feel about that. Nope, not happy about that either. So I'm going to go ahead and undo and reduce the scale of this thing and then maybe try to paint on it like this a little bit more. And let me just try maybe a different one. Cool. So now I have a jewel inlay on this one, and I'm going to do the same on this one. Bigger to start out with. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So now I have jewel insets for both of these two as well. And let me see, I'd also like to be able to add that same kind of drop down color that the other one had. Let me see if it's possible. So I'm going to go back to my layers, and this is why I hate Substance Painter's UIs, because it's hard to navigate like this sometimes when you're trying to do a lot of things. Let's see. I'm going to go to this one, and I'm using that bolt shadow one that I had before, and then I'm going to go ahead and scale it. Oh, no, I need to do a new layer when it comes to that. But you know what? We can just keep that as it is right now. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to do some more patterns on the leather for the handle itself. So we go back to our normal layer, and I'm going to go ahead and do an indent on it so it gives me that detail when it comes to like the leather strapping around. So let's see, how are we going to do this? Sorry. So I think I want to have the leather kind of be raised a tiny bit, so I'm going to go to my normals layer, and then these options right here. Sorry, I'm just moving some stuff around. And then we're going to change the color. So this is going to be neutral because it's just going to be flat, and we're going to use it to create normal detail. And then the metallic part, take that off. Base color is white. Yes, let's see how this works. Start painting from above. Maybe it's easier. No, that's not going to work in 3D mode. Let's see, maybe I can just do it sort of perpendicular in this, like just like this. And as you can see, since I have symmetry, it's painting all around. It's good. And then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and add the next layer. And then the next one. So what I'm doing now is basically painting in a way where I'm separating all the normal details in layers and such, and then keeping it separate, so then I can add more color on top of it and make it a little bit more rich. So now that we have painted a little bit more on the hilt, take it around like this. Undo. Okay, and then as you can see now we have some ridges on the hilt. So the next thing I want to do is I actually want to add a little bit of color to imply some sort of weather on the hilt. So that's going to require going back to the original leather layer, which is, where are you? There you go, this one. And I'm going to go ahead and make a duplicate. Take the color of that, and I want to have it a little bit closer to what it would be if it started to wear off. So I'm going to find the color right here. Take it a little bit closer to how it would be if it's worn, and then I go back to the mask, and then I clear the mask, and then I zoom down to the areas where the hands would grasp, and I'm going to go ahead and paint there. So let's see how this is going to work. Probably need to change my brush. Yes, I do. Shape. That one, that's pretty good. And then I'm going to go ahead and just scale this and start painting. So I'm probably going to, after I paint some of this stuff, just adjust the color so it doesn't look too dramatic. So I'm just going to. Try to move this to the side. And painting some of the weather on the hilt itself. And in this occasion, I want to go ahead and maybe take it along the center here to imply like this spin wear right along the center. So I'm just going to do a very rough painting of that new color here. And then I'm going to go ahead and switch to smudge mode and smudge that so it looks a little bit more natural. And just for the sake of realism, there's some places I can probably go ahead and edit a tiny bit of some of the more where it would be darker areas. So I will go into my erase tool, scale that down, and I'm going to erase some of the areas inside within the ridge right here. It's a little bit smaller. So now we have a little bit of a worn handle and such. So what is going to be the next thing? Now we're going to go ahead and paint on the gold itself to give it a little bit more worn property to itself. I'm going to expand my textures. I'm going to go to my gold copy, and I'm going to find some sort of a non-uniform brush that I can use to paint with, something probably a little bit chaotic. So let's go ahead and see what we have. So let's say dirt. See, has to be something, yeah, something like this. Let's go ahead and try that as a starter to go with, and then we'll see how the effect of this turns out to be. So I'm going to take it, and then I'm going to, no, that's not where I'm going. Duk. Where's the grayscale? Sorry. Oh, that's why I'm erasing that. That's good. Okay, cool. Then I'm going to go ahead, and that's the problem, that my brush is different right here, so I need to find the right brush for Eduhen. Yeah, I'll go with something like this just to start out with and see how it comes out. Could be that it looks like shit, but we'll see. I like to just sort of slowly patter on detail like this, kind of give some definition to the blade in some certain areas. And I'm going to do the same for the other side. Some around the top. Oops. Sorry, cable's in the way. Some around the top. And then some of this I'm going to take, and some of them I'm going to preserve the detail, and some of it I'm just going to smudge more into the blade. Have some sort of variety in surface. And then I'm probably going to do the same for the bottom. Probably get a little more darkness when it comes to there. So where you'll see more weight on the blade itself. And tiny bit on towards the inside and such. And all of this, again, after I sort of put down all this detail, I'm going to smudge it a little bit so it kind of has a little bit more form-fitting to the actual look of the blade. Smudge. Take the scale of this. Trick is not making it look like brush strokes and such. So let's see, that's looking okay. And I'm gonna do a little bit more at the bottom, the same when it comes to this, to imply some use of shadows and such. So let's see, how big is that on the surface? Scale that. And then we're gonna keep it more to the areas where it probably would meet and such. So as you can see, that's right there, I didn't do my normals correctly. That's a sign of that, so it's not good. Out, and as you can see, when you're close, of course, you can see how it looks like, but at a distance, it looks more blended in with the actual material. And see, what else could we do? And we're going to do maybe a tiny bit also more for the blade, so we can apply some of that also darkness to the blade itself. So let me go ahead and expand this. And then I'm going to go to this one, the main color for the blade. I'm going to make a duplicate layer of it. And then this one right here, I'm just going to turn a little bit darker. So I'm going to find the color, lower that a tiny bit, go to the mask, clear the mask. And then I'm going to use that same brush, or not the smudge one, that more kind of the rough detail one. And you know what? Actually, the first thing I want to do is actually want to fill in some of these spaces right here, just to give it a little bit more definition to my piss off. Come on. So to give a little bit of more reinforcement to this, you don't have to be so precise, but just enough when you zoom out that you can actually see it. So fill this in, fill this in. And then I'm going to go and take some of that onto the base itself. That color right in here. Then take this, smudge it a tiny bit. And I'm going to go ahead and find different locations on the blade to do the same. Maybe right towards the top here. Scale that. And no, I'm on smudging, sorry. Go back to painting. And then I'm just going to put like a very rough color so it has some sort of variation, and then afterwards smudge it. So I'm going to go and paint down the whole of the blade. It's going to go up towards here to give that a little bit of contrast. It's not very precise, but it's getting there. Then I'm going to take those and smudge it a little bit. Ooh, you can see this is the stuff that really makes my computer chug. But you know what? It's probably a good time to save my work in case it crashes. And I can see the brush is probably too small for do what I want, so I'm just going to increase it, and then I'm going to give it an overall smudge on it so there's a bit of a gradient on it. And what else could I do for this? I want to imply that there's a tiny bit of highlights on it, just to fake a tiny bit of detail like that. So again, it involves copying layers. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take this gold right here, my original. I'm going to take it and make a duplicate. And I'm going to raise it over all of them. And then I'm going to take this color. And I'm going to make it a little bit closer to white. That. Clear my mask. Where are you? Clear mask, yes. And then I'm going to make sure that I have a good brush selected to be able to paint on this. So we are painting now. And I'm going to go see circle. It's one that I've been using. You'll probably, whenever you work with this, come up with your own brushes, but I'm going to use this one on this occasion, and I'm going to fake some highlights on this by adding additional color, and I'm going to go along the top of this. As you can see, I'm being a little too dramatic with it, so I'm going to lower that down, scale down my brush size, and go right along the tips. And maybe a little bit bigger, so let's go ahead and redo those again. 1, 2, 3, 4. 5. Cool, that's a tiny bit. It's very subtle, but you'll be able to see it in a game editor, and then we'll do applying a little bit of highlighting to these indents or these extrusions. So I'm going to take a little bit of here and just take this. I have it be where it curves around like this a tiny bit. There. And then I'll go to the other one and do the same as well. And then it's a bit on the unprecise side. So once I'm done with that, I'm going to go ahead and smudge it a tiny bit. Some of it's a combination. It's of course, the details that you're going to see in the normal maps and such, and the other is the stuff that you're going to paint itself. So now it has a tiny bit more of highlights and such, and I'm going to do the same for the blade itself, so you can see some of these edges more. So what I'm going to do now is expand this, take this color, which is the brighter one, and I'm going to make a duplicate of that. And then I'm going to go take the color, and where are you? Closer to white now, and then I'm going to go and clear the mask. Clear mask. And then when that's selected, I'm going to go to some of the areas where maybe it gets a little bit lost through the shadows. So like, for example, if I go right here, and I'm just going to trace. No, sorry, smudges was accidentally on. Go to the mask itself. Am I painting? It should be, so let's try that. As you can see, just a tiny bit of faking light information can kind of make some of these details pop out just a tiny bit more. So it's one of those ways you alter reality just to have a little bit more readability on this. Here, oh shit. Misplaced. So as you can see now, there's a tiny bit more definition on the blade, and you could also do that for some of the other areas as well, like anywhere that it could potentially make contact. So like, for example, here to here, and potentially right along here, but let's see if that has any effect on it, because it could be the color difference is too subtle. So I'm going to go ahead and scale this a tiny bit and take it here to the edge. As you can see, doesn't have a good effect just because of how subtle it is and such. But alternately as well, if you want to give it a little bit more detail, where you see, like for example, in a good game engine, so you can just go with that same brush and slowly take some of these details that I've drawn and pull them out a tiny bit. So I'm going to just paint ever so slightly. See, this is one of those occasions I wish I had a nicer computer, because my computer lags on me, and then I can't actually get good, proper brush strokes. And then maybe, oh shit, sorry. Then maybe let's see, try to find a little more subtle, so put it in little locations. Like the sword is a little bit more sharper in this area right here, so I'm going to go in here a tiny bit, and then put little areas sort of to give it some areas of attention depending on which angle the sword goes when it comes into the game. So I'm going to go paint that slightly a bit here. Slightly here where this blade comes. And I think I'm almost done with this. Just a basic demonstration. I don't know for you if you've used it much, where this stuff is just all elementary. And if it is, I'm sorry I wasted your time. And then for the others, hopefully people who've never used this program before, they can sort of have some sort of basic idea how is it the flow that when it comes to this program, which is sort of like almost like working on Photoshop in some way. Well, it is like working on Photoshop because it's made by the same people who make Photoshop. But when you add the 3D aspect to it like that, then it becomes a bit more. So I can keep doing, for example, for the whole of the blade, but as you can see, I would say that's pretty acceptable. If I wanted to if I want to just keep going, I can just keep painting on this and this and this. But there you go. It's a very, very basic in-game item. You can add a lot more detail depending on how you want it to look. But as you can see, there we go. Now we have a scimitar. You can hold shift to move your light. And let's say, fuck it, save and render one, see how it looks. Mode, rendering. And let's go ahead and change that to something desert. And when you change modes, you of course have to change your lighting and such, but I'm going to go ahead and shift that. Yeah, let's try that one. I can sit here and waiting for this to render. It's probably going to take forever because my laptop is shit. But there you go. That's just a very basic walkthrough of how is it you would get something in the game and into a Substance Painter and paint some details into it, and just kind of a basic demonstration. So that is it.